Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Cory Booker once again has to learn the hard way that you don't come at a constitutional scholar like Ted Cruz and come out unscathed. Let's dive in.
Night after night after night, angry mobs were outside the Supreme Court justices' homes, and in the entire course of it, the Biden Justice Department prosecuted nobody. We had the Attorney General sitting at that table, and multiple Republican senators asked him, why are you not enforcing the law? What they are doing is a crime. And my friend from New Jersey said, it is a lie to say we, the Democrats, condone this. I would challenge, my friend, find a single Democrat senator on this committee holding the Attorney General to account for not enforcing this law. I was here at those hearings, and I do not recall a single Democrat senator saying to the Attorney General, you should arrest these people who are violating the law, you should protect the judges. I agree that there was general language against violence, but not a single Democrat senator that I ever saw in this committee was willing to hold Attorney General Merrick Garland to account for flagrantly disregarding the federal criminal law because the Biden administration agreed with the protesters and I think wanted those justices harassed at their home.
I really appreciate that you've now shifted the accusation you made earlier. Your accusation was that we were silent in the face of protests at Supreme Court justices' homes. Again, we joined together in a bipartisan way, not only to condemn that, but to pass legislation to extend round-the-clock security protection literally days. It was introduced May 5th, passed the Senate in a bipartisan fashion on May 9th. So if you're saying that we didn't criticize Merrick Garland...
Did the Biden DOJ arrest a single person under this law?
You are now changing the...
No, that is what I said. That is what I said.
Again, I'll pull the record.
Did the Biden DOJ arrest even one?
Again...
The answer is no.
My point to you is the accusation that the Democrats on this committee do not care about the safety of federal judges. I did not interrupt you, sir. I would appreciate if you let me finish. I am sick and tired of hearing the kind of heated partisan rhetoric, which is one of the reasons why we have such divisions in this country. The attacks we see from the President of the United States of America trolling and dragging judges through is what we should be talking about that puts people in danger. I'm simply taking issue with the claim that you made at the top that people on the Democratic side of the aisle do not care about the safety and the security of judges and said nothing. You said we were silent after people's houses were protested. That is a patent lie, sir. We were not silent. We took action. We've joined in a bipartisan way to protect those judges, as was done in a bipartisan way to protect a New Jersey judge after their horrific attack at their home. So I see you now trying to shift the debate to whether we talk to an attorney general. I'm simply taking issue with this accusation that somehow we Democrats are so bad because we don't call out threats to our judicial colleagues. And that is wrong. You could change the argument now that you want, but what you said was patently not true and was, in fact, a patent lie.
So I do enjoy the fact that my colleague from New Jersey raises his voice and says it's a patent lie and says he's doing so in defense of lowering the rhetoric. There is some irony to doing those two together. I'll point out that in the entire course of those remarks, Senator Booker did not dispute the central point I made, which is the Biden Justice Department arrested 0 people, prosecuted 0 people for violating the criminal law, and every Democrat senator on this committee was silent about it. And this was an ongoing pattern for months. And I would note also that the senator from New Jersey clutched his pearls about language threatening judges, and yet I do not recall a single Democrat senator of this committee saying a word when Chuck Schumer went to the steps of the Supreme Court and threatened the safety of the Supreme Court justices by name, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, and he said, you have unleashed the whirlwind and you will pay the price. And Not a single Democrat senator had a word to say about this. And so their outrage is selective.
Y'all, there was a time that Ted Cruz was one of the most hated senators in that chamber. As a matter of fact, I think a quote from Lindsey Graham, no less, said that if someone had shot Ted Cruz, you would not get one single senator's vote to convict. Now he's one of the best ones of the bunch up there, and he is absolutely roasting Cory Booker. And he deserves it. Booker deserves it, because the Democrat Party has been screaming about rhetoric for the past decade. Well, folks, remember this. Democrats don't just deflect and deny, they also project, particularly the more leftist ones. They will project their problems. They will project what they're doing. They'll project whatever they can onto the Republicans, because they know deep down they don't want to be caught with their hands in the cookie jar. Well, guess what? This is a perfect example here, because I remember, because I had just moved up to the D.C. area, I remember how crazy it was, and the talk of the town was how no one's really protecting the Supreme Court justices. That was unprecedented. And normally, the Supreme Court judges usually get a sort of extra special treatment. Mainly because they're not the ones actually taking bribes. There's nothing to bribe them on. You can't bribe someone on the Constitution. And so they had a very special place in D.C. circles. And so when no one was ever brought up on charges, when there were mobs outside of these people's, of our justices' homes, well, guess what? Even the Democrat side of that town was shocked. Hey, y'all, here's the deal. Gold loves President Trump. Under Trump's first term, the price of gold soared 53%, and the price of silver jumped 51%. Since the start of the second term, gold has skyrocketed even higher, breaking records and even outperforming stocks. Here's what I like about precious metals like gold and silver. They have been used as a store of value for centuries. Governments can't easily manipulate it. They are used as hedges against market risk and, of course, against inflation. That's why I partnered with the amazing people over at Goldco. Goldco is an award-winning precious metals company. They are fans of this show, and they have helped millions of Americans just like y'all to purchase over $3 billion in gold and silver. Right now, you can get a free copy of their 2025 gold and silver kit. On top of that, you might also qualify for their amazing unlimited silver bonus offer. So don't wait on this. Go to politibrawlgold.com to learn more. That's politibrawlgold.com, or call 855-644-GOLD. They had no idea that ultimately their rhetoric had gotten to a point where their own supporters would go to the home of a Supreme Court justice and not just stage a protest. There were people with incendiary devices, if I'm not mistaken. There were people who made direct threats and tried to break into those houses to do Lord knows what. That should have been beyond the pale, and even the Democrat senators should have come out and said something. And instead of saying something, they pretty much just wrote a strongly worded letter. So yeah, they did something. You know what they didn't do? They didn't call out the violence, because they know their rhetoric has consequences. If they even dare tell the mob not to do something, that mob will turn on them. By the way, mob violence and leftist politics go hand in hand. That's been the same playbook since the bread and circus days. That was definitely the playbook in revolutionary France. That was definitely the playbook in revolutionary Russia. And it was the same playbook, very briefly, in revolutionary China. Funny what happens when you let these Marxists have any sorts of power whatsoever. And so when you give into that sort of rhetoric, when you enable it, it's going to spill over. And it almost did to our Supreme Court. So there's not even a good standard being used. It's clearly, and still is to this day, because we're trying to get some form of justice here, it's still to this day a town that will not convict any of the people that threaten Supreme Court justices' lives. There is two sets of justice here still, ladies and gentlemen, and that is the justice for the Democrats, which is a slap on the wrist, maybe a strongly worded letter, and then justice for the Republicans, well, guess what? You're going in the slammer. Right? That's essentially been the rules that the Democrats have made for themselves, and it is an evil one at that. It is inherently unfair, inherently wicked, and obviously beneficial to only one side. That's not what justice is supposed to do. That's why we see the statue of justice. That statue is holding a balance scale, and then usually a sword or a word of law in the other, and that person is blindfolded. That doesn't happen in Democrat-run areas anymore, particularly in the cities. It's rare. You'll find good positives here and there. It happens. Something about a blind squirrel and an acorn. But Ted Cruz is calling out the entire Democrat Party, which still refuses to admit that their rhetoric has consequences. Chuck Schumer should have been censured for those words. You don't go after the Supreme Court justices, not in D.C. Outside of D.C., you could talk about them. Inside of D.C., that's sort of taboo. And Chuck Schumer did that on the steps of, I believe it was the Supreme Court building. And now to this day, there's a giant thing of wire around that building. Because they know deep down that they've ended up stoking too much of a problem. There is a full-blown Democrat mob, or rather a leftist mob. Can't honestly call them Democrats because they don't always show up. But we've seen their rhetoric cause untold amount of damage across the country. We saw it during the Summer of Love in 2020. We saw it in the pro-Hamas riots. We're seeing it on college campuses now. There was just a terror attack over the weekend planned by an illegal immigrant. And what is that person illegal of doing? Not crossing the border illegally, no. This dude overstayed his visa and never got caught. And he planned a horrific attack for over a year. There is a rhetorical problem on the left. There's this social media app called Reddit, and it's a complete cesspool. Old Twitter used to be like this, and then Blue Sky, it's a problem. Their rhetoric has consequences, and they know this, but they won't use their own power. Democrats like Cory Booker will not use their own platforms to actually go after and start calming down the mob. They can't, because that mob will then turn on them. Democrats know this. They've been playing with fire for too long, and now they know that they're starting to get burned. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.